by C.S. And I have a free study that's available on my website for each week. You can go to BibleNerd.com. Right at the very top, I kind of put a link right at the top, so you don't have to look through the blogs or anything like that. It's totally free. There's no sign up. You don't have to do any kind of give me your email address. None of that stuff. It's totally free. And you can go to the website to pull off the PDF for this week, for tonight. And at the bottom of that blog will be week 3. So you can also print that off and just go through it and read the chapters of Mere Christianity, answer the questions. That's what I'll talk about next Tuesday night. So every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, I'm going to try to go live here unless there's some sort of technical problem like I had last week. But still trying to just figure out how all this stuff works. So and we're going to be going live here on YouTube and TikTok here, or YouTube and Facebook as well. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing it, and love to talk to you about this incredible work of C.S. Lewis. Tonight we're going to be talking about book 1. So the way it's set up is different books within Mere Christianity. There were talks that were given, and what happens tonight we're going to talk about book 1, chapters 3 through 5. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so it's like now we're live on YouTube and on Facebook. You can join me there as well. I have my comments turned on, hopefully on both, so I'll be able to address comments, questions. If you have the study guide, you can go through those questions with me, and we'll kind of read those. And this is just something new I'm testing out. So a little backstory at my church. I usually do a Bible study, and then I do like a 1 or 2 day theme study just to break things up a little bit in between book studies. And I really want to do like a Mere Christianity study and turn it into a 10-week study with those guys. In fact, I've got it sitting here. So pull it out here. So I got the whole thing sitting right here. So I created this entire little study guide, teacher notes, readings. I thought, well, I've already created all of it. Why not just get it out there more? So that's kind of what this whole thing was. Is like, well, I love talking about this, and gives me a little direction and something fun to do on TikTok and on Facebook and YouTube, and just adds content and all that fun stuff. So I figured, well, I've already done the work. Why not just get it out there? So every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, I'll be reviewing the handout, which is available totally for free at BibleNerd.com. You can go up to the top. I put a little link right at the top of the page, so you don't have to search for it too hard. And what you'll be able to do is print out the one we're going to talk about tonight. And then at the bottom of that will be next week. So you can get a head start on next week's if you'd like, and just have some blog information on there and just a chance to kind of review and talk about this stuff. So go to BibleNerd.com, spelled like my name or username, nerd with a 3 RD, BibleNerd.com. That's where my Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, kind of all of it's under that brand name, to just have a lot of fun with this. I'm finishing up my bachelor's degree in biblical studies, and I'm teaching Bible studies. I teach D group. I do a bunch of different things. And so I'm kind of creating the content, immersing myself in this world, and just want more opportunities to get it out there. And again, I've already created all of it. That's half the battle. Anybody who does this stuff, I mean, this is half the battle, is creating it. Now the battles I'm learning is how to work cameras and microphones and lights and all this other stuff. You guys are crazy good at this stuff. Some of the people that are on TikTok all the time or on YouTube and Facebook, man, it is just incredible to watch behind that you're trying to put this stuff together and how much time it actually takes. So I'll be kind of looking at both cameras. I've got TikTok kind of here. I've got YouTube and Facebook. Hi guys over there. That's probably where I have more people that are following the content over there, but I really have enjoyed getting on TikTok as well. So I'll give it a few more minutes here, just maybe a couple more to have people log in as it's getting pushed out, and hopefully it's working on all these platforms. And then again, BibleNerd.com, you can get the free PDF of what we're going to talk about tonight. And then you can get the PDF that we're going to be talking about next week. Like week 3's handout is at the bottom of that blog. It should be really easy to see it. So, and it's totally free. There's no sign in, sign up. I don't need your email, none of that stuff. I really want to try to just make it as free as possible. I did put a donation link if you feel moved to donate to the ministry, if you will, but that's not the reason behind it. It was just more, I already created the content, love talking about it, so why not get it out there? So we'll give it a few more minutes. Oh, thanks, Ward. That's great. It's all kind of just through Wix, so I'm kind of playing with it a little bit. I had to go and do some SEO stuff with it, so still kind of working on that too. I'm all just kind of doing it on my own. So, so I'll wait for a few. I want to give it just a few more minutes for everything to kind of sync up here. I do want to try to get it all into one camera, but I think I need more subscribers probably on TikTok to get the studio access. So I'm probably got to just figure that out. But at least right now I got Facebook, YouTube over here, and I got TikTok over here. So we'll give it a few more minutes. Appreciate anybody jumping on. You can get the PDF again, totally free, BibleNerd.com. We're going to be talking about C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. We're going to do book 1, chapters 3 through 5 tonight. So we'll get started here in just a few more minutes. Let me get my notes going. Okay. Yep. All right. Just a few more minutes. I want to just make sure everything's kind of working. Again, trying to figure all this out. But hopefully I have a little fun with this. And you should be able to find on my YouTube channel last week's, or it was 2 weeks ago. I was having some issues last Tuesday to try to go live. So I'm trying to work that out and work out the kinks too. And just kind of, again, just learning how all this stuff works. So Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis, we're going to do book 1. So it's one book, but he kind of calls each section a book. And so it's just called book 1. And it's chapters 3 through 5. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. The idea is the moral argument, the idea that from law to need. So we talked about how there is a moral law last week. We talked about the idea that there's a moral law giver. And so that's kind of what we're laying the foundation for. But he really doesn't get into the God of Christianity in those first couple chapters. He's just laying the idea of a theistic worldview, that there is a creator, a mind behind creation and the moral law. And so that's what he's laying the foundation for. Now we're going to get into kind of from the moral law to the need for that and the need of a savior. So that's kind of what we're going to get into as well. Oh yeah, it's a great book. It's an old one, but it's really, really good. It's a timeless kind of thing by C.S. Lewis called Mere Christianity. It was originally talks given on the BBC. So there was radio addresses that they compiled and turned into this book. So it's kind of interesting because after a couple of radio addresses, he would get letters in the mail with some objections or counterpoints, and he would address that in the book. So it's kind of a cool format of how it started out as radio addresses during World War II. So it's actually really kind of a cool way of doing it. And obviously a lot of people know C.S. Lewis from Narnia. I think Screwtape Letters is amazing. I still need to read his Space Odyssey. He had kind of like a space sci-fi book that I've never read, but I've heard a lot of people are kind of picking that back up again. It's getting a little bit popular again. So, but this is great. Mere Christianity is awesome, and I love Screwtape Letters. That's probably the next one I'll do. Is Screwtape Letters is fantastic. All right, we'll give it one more minute just to let everybody kind of log in here. So, and if you're on a platform, maybe especially Facebook and YouTube, maybe just say hello, where you're from, kind of thing, or if you maybe this instead of where you're from, just do if you've read the book or not. So yes, you have. No, you haven't. Let's see if a couple no's and yeses pull up on the stream. That'd be cool. Hey, Demon, how are you? Doing Mere Christianity tonight. Every Tuesday night, I go live to talk about Mere Christianity. So we're going to do week 2 of the study. We'll get started in I'm going to give it maybe 30 more seconds or so. Oh yeah, Problem of Pain, great divorce. I got those back there. Problem of Pain is fantastic. It really does. It just raises the bar of what you even call suffering and pain when you look at it from that view. That's fantastic. And then Great Divorce is really good. That's another one. Yeah. Yeah, you don't need to know about chronic. Yeah, and that's probably for somebody that does have like chronic pain all the time and somebody complains about pain, you have a higher level of what pain actually means. And then if you look at a God that has the understanding of suffering to the millionth degree, what he would consider suffering would be probably totally different. So somebody that does have something where they're struggling with a chronic pain and they hear somebody complain about something, you really can go, hey, you haven't seen nothing yet. You haven't really experienced pain until you've experienced it my level. So, but the problem of pain is just that idea of if there is a good God, why is there even pain or suffering in the world? So it really is a good book. Well worth reading. All right, let's get started. Okay, so if you go to BibleNerd.com, right at the very top, there is the PDF that we're going to be going through just some of the questions and some of the readings from this section. And we'll just kind of go through there. And if people want to comment, jump on, we can kind of talk about the answers too. There's some application questions. Hopefully this is sounding okay. I've got my microphone here, but that's for YouTube and TikTok. So again, I'm just still trying to learn how all this stuff works. And hopefully I can get it all on one camera, one microphone in the future. It's just a matter of kind of growing the page or growing the studio. So let's get started. So last week we learned a little bit about C.S. Lewis and how Mere Christianity was a series of radio addresses. We read and discussed the 2 main points that Lewis was trying to make, along with some objections that showed up from the claim. So after he did the radio address, people would write into him and say some objections to what he was saying. Now, chapter 3 opens up with restating and exploring those claims a little bit deeper. And the people recognized that the standard of right and wrong, or what he calls the law of human nature, what we maybe call moral law, an objective moral law, something outside of ourselves, outside of our cultures, outside of our times, is this idea that there's an objective moral law, thus there must be an objective moral lawgiver. And so he kind of starts laying the foundation for that. And we're going to explore that a little bit more. And yet, what he really wants to push back on is the fact that even though we know there's this moral law that's pressing on us to do right, or what we should or shouldn't do, we often fall short of that standard. But we expect everybody else to follow it. But oftentimes we fall short. And he anticipates the objection that people call this being a very unfair, that we can't be perfect. And he clarifies what his purpose is in these letters, not to assign blame, but to investigate the truth. From the standpoint of seeking truth, the fact that humans are not what they ought to be is an important implication on understanding human nature and on moral responsibility. So I wanted to read this next paragraph that's in C.S. Lewis to give us some imagery. And I love that part of C.S. Lewis. Anytime he gets a little deep with his theology, he usually throws in some analogies, some imagery, just to dial it back a little bit. But he even warns several times, if the analogy doesn't work, throw it away. It's not the perfect thing. It's just helping us to see it from different angles to kind of wrap our minds around it. So this is a paragraph 2 in the book. That's one thing that's great about Bible study. You can go to chapter and verse. We're obviously just doing like a book study. It's more like what page number, depending on the printer, is going to be different. But I want to read this part from C.S. Lewis. Let me pull it up. Oh, where's my mouse? I got too many screens open here. Here we go. Okay. If you take a thing like a stone or a tree, it is what it is, and there seems no sense in saying it ought to have been otherwise. Of course, you may say to a stone that it may be the wrong shape if you want to use it for rockery, or that the tree is bad because it does not give you as much shade as you expected. But all you mean with the stone or the tree, it does not happen to be convenient for some purpose of your own. You are not, except as a joke, blaming them for that. You really know that given the weather and the soil, the tree could not have been any different. What we, from our point of view, call a bad tree is obeying the laws of its nature, just as much as a good one would. I think that's kind of an interesting way to kind of frame this idea of whether it's opinion, subjective, or whether it's objective. So the question I have here on the PDF is, how does the stone tree analogy function? What point is Lewis trying to make by comparing humans to non-moral objects? So that's kind of the first question I have on the PDF. If anybody has any thoughts, you can put in the comments of that. If you have the PDF, you can kind of reread that question again. But the tree analogy shows the difference between things that simply are and things that can be judged morally. So there's an opinion of moral, but it has to be either subjective or objective. And that's what we're going to get into a little bit tonight. Let's do, let me see if Facebook, I want to make sure, okay, yep, just want to make sure everything's working. Facebook, YouTube's over here, TikTok's over here. So, and you can go to BibleNerd.com to get the PDF I'm going through. It just has study guide questions, application questions, kind of what chapters to read of the book. And we're just going to be talking about it every Tuesday night. So hopefully this will build as more people jump on. So here's kind of the answer I came up with. Calling them, quote, bad is merely saying they're not suitable for a specific purpose. But humans, by contrast, are aware of a standard of how they ought to behave and can choose to follow or disobey. Lewis uses this analogy to argue that because we can be judged by an ought or ought not, we cannot be treated as mere objects of nature. Lewis will continue contrasting natural laws, what things do, with the moral law, what humans ought to do. And next, we have the same real-world experience as we test out ideas Lewis is trying to formulate. So let's read 2 more stories that Lewis puts together here. So these are another analogies that he's trying to help us with. Where'd my mouse go? My mouse keeps disappearing. All right. So here's another reading. A man occupying the corner seat in a train because he got there first, and a man who slipped in while my back was turned and removed my bag are both equally inconvenient. So whether somebody's already taken the seat or somebody, you save the spot with your bag or something like that, and then somebody just moves your bag and takes your spot. Both are equally inconvenient, but you only blame the second man, not the first, because he shouldn't have done what he did. So it's not an inconvenience thing. Both of them are inconvenient. They have no difference there. But morally, there is a sense that the guy that's already there isn't wrong. He's just there first. But if somebody actually takes your stuff and moves it, like you're saving your spot, then suddenly it's something he shouldn't have done that. Now, if you're the outside watching these two animals interact, you'd have no idea what they ought to have done. You have no frame of reference for it. You just watch what they do. But because we are human and we get the inside information on this, we can see, yeah, the second guy shouldn't have done that. Why? Is it a law? Is it culturally different? Is it subjectively wrong? Or is it just, it has this idea of being wrong? It shouldn't have been what he did. He shouldn't have just taken that spot that somebody was reserving. The same as somebody just butts in line. People are waiting in line. If somebody just butts in line, everybody's like, no, you can't do that. You got to get in the back of the line. Why? Now, obviously, these moral arguments always get to really big stuff. And I love how Lewis is kind of shrinking this down a little bit, that is talking about kind of these other things that we know are just kind of culturally or outside of culture. They're not a culture thing. They're just something you should or shouldn't do. And we have inside information on why we think that, where if you're just observing this interaction, you wouldn't know any different. Let's go to number 3. I'm not angry except perhaps for a moment before I come to my senses with the man who trips me by accident. I am angry with the man who tries to trip me, even if he doesn't succeed. Yet the first has actually hurt me and the second hasn't. What a great analogy C.S. Lewis uses here. He's got 2 different scenarios. One, somebody accidentally trips you, you fall, you scuff your knee, whatever. It's an accident. He didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. The next guy tries to trip you, but doesn't even succeed. You don't get physically hurt in any way. He just tries to trip you. Which one are you mad at? Which one shouldn't have done what they should have done? It's an objective morality that we're placing on both parties. I don't think you should have done that. Everybody else shouldn't have thought you did that, and you're doing it anyway. You're doing something you shouldn't have done. But again, if we're just observing objects doing what they're doing, if we're just observing 2 animals, monkeys, tigers, bears, whatever, doing these things, we wouldn't have any sense that they shouldn't have done it, or they ought not to have done that, or should have done something different. We can only observe. So that's where I think C.S. Lewis is using some brilliant analogies here. So the question is on the PDF, why do we blame intentional wrongdoing more than accidental harm, even when the accidental harm could be greater? In this scenario, he physically actually hurts himself. And that injury could be extreme, but it wouldn't be, morally wrong. You see what we're drawing him? But the other guy trying to trip, regardless of any physical harm, you catch it, you say, well, hey, what are you doing trying to trip me for? What are you doing that for? You shouldn't do that. That's appealing to object morality, not a cultural rule or law or you got unwritten rules in sports. All the ideas, this idea that you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that, regardless if it actually even harms you. That's what I think is such a framing of what C.S. Lewis is trying to do here in these letters. Let's see, make sure got TikTok over here, got YouTube and Facebook over here. So, okay, let's do another reading from the book here to kind of ground this even further. This is C.S. Lewis, Book 1, chapters 3 through 5 that we're talking about tonight. And again, the PDF is on BibleNerd.com. Each week I'll have it available on the website. So you'll see week 2 tonight's there, and then week 3 is at the bottom. Then I'll kind of rotate that where week 3 and 4 will be available. So each week will have the week we're on and the week we're working into. So here's kind of this next reading. Men ought to be unselfish, ought to be fair. Men that are selfish, not that men are unselfish, nor that they will be unselfish, but they ought to be. It's an ought. It should be. It's an idea. I think this is really, really great here. It's a standard that we shouldn't be selfish. That's never been rewarded in any culture, any time, any continent, any race, any ethnicity, any gender. All of these supersede that. So it can't be something creature or evolution created. It have to be a moral lawgiver to give us some of these ideas. So men ought to be unselfish. They ought to be fair. Not that men are that thing. It's just that they should be or ought to be. The moral law or the law of human nature is not simply a fact about human behavior in the same way as law of gravitation, or simply a fact about how heavy things or how heavy objects behave. On the other hand, it's not mere fancy, for we cannot get rid of the idea. And most of the things we say and think about men should be reduced to nonsense if we did. It's not simply a statement about how we should like men to behave for our own convenience. For the behavior we call bad or unfair is not exactly the same as the behavior we find inconvenient, and may even be the opposite. I'm telling you what, read some C.S. Lewis. Mere Christianity is just great. And again, if he gets a little too deep in some of this stuff, he'll throw a little analogy in. Now, be aware, this isn't systematic theology. He's not trying to wrestle with dogmatic differences. That's why it's called Mere Christianity. He wants to find some things that just root ourselves in truth, kind of create some foundations. He doesn't start to wrestle with dogmatic differences, denominational differences. He's not systematic theology. He's just trying to lay some of this foundation of a moral law and a moral lawgiver. Even before we get to the law of God of Christianity, he's not getting that far yet. We're simply talking about a theistic worldview. And I think that's really, really cool the way he frames some of this stuff. So let's go back to the handout. Let's see. Okay. I hope you can see that Lewis's point here is that the law of human nature must be something real and independent from us. There exists a genuine moral law that we did not create, but we, quote, feel pressing on us. This idea we can't get rid of, as he says here, this idea we can't quite get rid of, how we should have acted in certain situations, how we ought to do it, and how we shouldn't have done certain things. There is this moral law that is pushing on us that is outside of us creating it, because a lot of times it's inconvenient to us. And it's a standard we think everybody else should hold, even if we try to let ourselves off the hook. And I think that's really an incredible part of what he's trying to say here. And so it nicely ties up now into chapter 4. So that's chapter 3 of book 1. Now we're going to get into chapter 4 of Mere Christianity. What lies behind the law? The first paragraph is a bit of a recap and really drives home the points that we've been talking about so far today. But Lewis now wants to explore what this tells us about the universe itself that we live in and how it came to be. He will explore two held views. The first is called materialism. The other is called religious. So there's kind of these two views, the materialistic, the religious. So let's look at question number 3 in the handout. In the 2 circles, write some phrases to describe these worldviews. So how would you describe materialism, materialistic worldview? How would you describe that? And you can put in the comments any thoughts there. You can describe kind of what it means to be materialistic. And it's not just that word maybe is like, well, consumer based, or I just want a bunch of materials. It's a little different than that in this context of what it means to be a materialist. It's not about just hoarding stuff and buying consumer stuff. It's a different kind of theme than that. So any thoughts you can put in the comments of how you define a materialistic worldview. Let's make sure I've got my chats up here. Again, I'm still learning how this stuff works. You guys are amazing with this stuff. Let me get my little readings out of the way. Make sure I don't have any comments there. So I've got YouTube and Facebook over here. I've got kind of TikTok over here. So materialistic in the sense of what C.S. Lewis is trying to nail down here is kind of more random chance, a fluke or luck, that the universe has always existed. Material just always was there. And given enough time and enough chance and enough random chemicals bouncing against each other, the temperature is just right, the earth or the planet spins at the right axis, has the right moon, the right distance from a sun, the gravitational fields, that all those things, just given enough time, given enough multiverses, there'll be enough chances for every possible conceivable thing to happen. And just given enough time, the right chemicals, the right temperature, just about anything could come together, including thinking creatures like ourselves. That's kind of what that materialistic worldview is essentially saying. Now, with the religious worldview, there is a beginning. That's something like a mind, an intelligent design, something like a mind that is personable, that has things it prefers and things that it rejects. It has preferences. It's not just a impersonable force. how to kind of explain that as like a mathematical equation. It doesn't care if you get it right or wrong. It's not hoping, ooh, I really hope he gets the answer right. There's no preference. It just is an impersonable force. And I find that people that talk about like karma and all this kind of stuff is another way to kind of explain this thing, but it still has a preference because it starts to categorize things that are good and bad. So it still has a personhood in a sense because it does have a created order that's hoping and alluding to and pressing on us, hey, don't do that, do this. Don't do this, do that. That's what makes it an intelligence. A mind is the best form, a best word we can use to explain that thing. And that's more of the religious view, is there is some sort of intelligent design in mind. Now, notice we haven't talked about the God of Christianity. We haven't gotten even into a specific God of any kind of theology, just that there is a mind behind order, creation, moral laws. There is an intelligence behind this, is what C.S. Lewis is trying to lay the groundwork for. And really one of the main reasons he moved away from being an atheist into at least a theistic worldview, and then eventually into the God of Christianity, which we will talk about through Mere Christianity. But I love how this book is kind of setting the foundation for this moral lawgiver, for a non-created creator. Like that's kind of what he's trying to lay the foundation for. So let's do question number 4. Why does Lewis say science cannot settle which view is true? What limits of science does he highlight? So I think that's a kind of a cool question here. He does show that there's a limitation of what science can do, and science cannot settle whether the materialistic worldview is correct or the religious. In fact, more and more often, religious views are holding true versus eternal, always existing universe. That's falling apart more and more and more, whether it's magnetic fields, speed of light, just all kinds of thermodynamics is just showing there was a start to this thing. There was a 0 day, and it's amazing even science is starting to back that up. But really can't settle the dispute. Science can't do that. So what limits of science does C.S. Lewis highlight in chapter 4? And you can put a comment in there. You can jump on the streams and just kind of let me know what you think. You can find this PDF on BibleNerd.com right at the top. I've got a little Mere Christianity study up there. So you can go to that and be able to print this for this week and then even print the one for next week that you can review and just be ready to comment next week. Every Tuesday, 7 o'clock, I'll be going live. And it's totally free. No login, no email, no create a password, no sign-ins, all just sitting right there on the website. So none of those paywalls, none of that stuff. And I'm really new to this whole space. So I'm still kind of learning by fire and messing things up and just having fun with it. I already created this whole thing. I mean, sitting right here, I created the whole thing. So I thought, well, I've done most of the work creating it. Why not just keep talking about it? I just love talking about it. So why not? All right. So I love this section where Lewis breaks down how science itself cannot prove which views are correct. It simply watches how things behave. It doesn't really discover anything new. It only reveals in ways of explaining what was already there. It's never really created, or it's discovering. It's saying, okay, we didn't know that was there, but it was always there before. He uses the idea of like vitamins. We learn more and more about how vitamins are good for us, but that doesn't mean they weren't good for us before. Or that we'll stop eating them or stop eating regular food because we find out about vitamins or something like that. And science can't answer why there's a universe, whether it has meaning at all, or whether there is something behind reality. These are all philosophical. These are all metaphysical questions outside of empirical science, outside of strictly proof or strictly evidence or strictly those types of things. Even a hypothetical complete science would leave questions on purpose and the ultimate explanation unresolved. It just would leave those things unresolved. It just cannot do that thing. And that's what makes it different. That's what C.S. Lewis is really trying to nail out here, is there's a difference between the law, the moral law, and the law of gravity. Certain things we have to obey those things. We have no choice. But it seems like we have a lot of choice when it comes to the moral law. And that's what I think he's trying to lay the groundwork between these two different views. So let's now do another reading from C.S. Lewis. Oh, where did I put it? All right, I got to figure out a way to put these on screens easier. Here's another reading from the book C.S. Lewis here. There is one more thing, and only one in the whole universe, which we know more about than we could learn from external observation. That one thing is man. It's us. We have insider information about this experience because it's us. Just like the rock has inside information about what it means to be a rock. Not that there's any kind of consciousness there, but that's kind of what he's trying to lay the groundwork is now we can observe and be part of this. So here, let's keep reading. We do not merely observe men, we are men. In this case, we have, so to speak, insider information. We are in the know. And because of that, we know that men find themselves under a moral law, which they did not make and cannot quite forget, even when they try, and which they know they ought to obey. I mean, how great is that? How well phrased is that? C.S. Lewis, man. I'm telling you what, I just love it. Notice the point. Anyone studying man from the outside, as we study electricity or cabbages, not knowing our language, and consequently not able to get any insider information from us, but merely observing what we did, would never get the slightest evidence that we had this moral law. How could he? For his observation would only show what we did, and the moral law is what we ought to do. Man, oh man. Man, oh man. Oh, we got something going on there. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, I'm still learning how TikTok and Facebook and all this stuff works. But either way, I'm just having fun talking about it. Let's just keep rolling on. So the universe either simply happens to be what it is for no reason, or there's a controlling power behind it. That's where you've got those two options. Either random chance, no particular reason, nothing guiding any of this, or there is a power, a mind, an intelligence behind this. And that's what we're going to be wrestling with through the rest of Mere Christianity, at least through this first book. Then it starts diving in a little bit more what it means to be Christian and what the Christian story seems to solve about some of these problems that we're going to get into. And it seems there is a quote, someone or something wants me to behave in a certain way, while also creating the laws or rules that govern everything else. The power behind facts, a director, a guide, there's something behind this. That when we go, and then we get one of the greatest lines in the entire book. This is a section we get the greatest line in the whole book. Do not think I'm going too fast than I really am. I am not yet within 100 miles of the God of Christian theology. All I've got to is a something which is directing the universe, and which appears to me as a law urging me to do right and making me feel responsible or uncomfortable when I do wrong. It's just such a brilliant way of taking these ideas and maybe shrink them down just a little bit. And just the way C.S. Lewis can put it together is so timeless. I think this was written, 1942, 44, somewhere in that range, because it was radio addresses that were just compiled into these books. And it obviously had to be tweaked a little bit to be a book versus a radio address. And then he even got some letters afterwards where people kind of objected to the radio address. So they mailed him letters. He compiled a bunch and actually responds to that in the letter. I think that makes it pretty cool how the book is done. And then we have the end of chapter 4. It ends with the reflection on another possible view outside of materialist and the religious view called the life force or creative evolution. That's kind of one of the things that was floating around during that time. And so he actually wants to address it here. He says proponents claim that evolutionary direction reflects a purposeful force rather than just blind chance. Now, Lewis argues this view completely collapses into theistic, because if the life force has any kind of a mind, then it would have preferences. If it's just a life force, it doesn't care if things are right or wrong. Just like, again, we use the analogy of mathematics. It doesn't care if you get it right or wrong. You either do or don't. It's not like, ooh, I really hope he gets this answer right. Ooh, if he gets it wrong, it's going to really suck because it's going to lead to wrong answers down the road. The start of a formula, if you get that first couple of things wrong and then all of a sudden you get down to the bottom, you're not even close by the time you get to the bottom. Do you think math is sitting there going, ooh, he got it wrong. Ooh, I hope he goes back and realizes, no, it's impersonable. It doesn't have a preference. It doesn't have any kind of preference. Where if this life force that was mentioned here in the book did, it falls into theism. It eventually falls back into the same argument. And if it lacks a mind, it would just be a mindless force. it wouldn't have any purpose or desire or cares. It wouldn't have those. It can't. It's an impersonable force. And I love how he ends the chapter. He says, this idea has all the thrills of religion, but none of the cost. If is the life force idea the greatest achievement of wishful thinking the world has yet seen? Now, I don't know if this has turned into other theologies or anything. I think it might have been just a place in time during the 1940s where they're trying to wrestle with some of these ideas that may have turned into other stuff. Maybe you have to research it, but he called it the life force. Maybe that was kind of the term that was going around. But I love that saying. All the thrills of religion, you get all the goodies of religion with none of the corrective, maturing, suffering, some of the things that come with the cost of following this thing. And I think that makes it really amazing. And you don't have a Jesus needing to die and blot out those sins. I mean, it removes a lot of the things about religious that can make you uncomfortable. So I love the idea here. He says this has got to be the most wishful thinking thing the world's ever come up with, is this life force idea. It's right at the end of chapter 4. It's kind of worth even just reading that little section. It's pretty cool. So now we get to my favorite chapter of book 1. Oh man, it's like asking a Bible nerd, what's your favorite book? I mean, all of them are. So it's tough to say that, but this really is one of my favorite sections of the first book of Mere Christianity. It's chapter 5. Its title is really good. It says, we have cause to be uneasy. Ooh. So we've been laying the idea of this foundation of a moral law, and that there's a moral lawgiver. And if there is, and we've fallen short of that moral law, we become that thing's enemy. We become, and we're a much lesser being than the thing that created everything. So we have a true cause to be uneasy once we realize there really is a moral lawgiver. So let's read through a couple of this as well. I call this the therefore chapter. You have Paul in all his letters. He'll lay out a bunch of stuff and then say, okay, therefore, and then lays out, okay, now what do you do with some of the stuff that we've been talking about? What do we do next? What's the therefore moment? I call that kind of chapter 5 is the therefore moment here in Mere Christianity. So we have a therefore moment that I think that's how Paul would have put it. So we've laid some foundation. We've considered some objections. We've done some counterpoints. We have a good reason to believe there's a God that he's laid out. And we have all fallen short of what that God prefers. So we really do have a case to be uneasy. So maybe we're like, okay. Wait, Ryan. Wait, Bible nerd. Wait, Mr. C.S. Lewis guy. We thought you had something new to say. If this is just some other philosophy, is this just some sort of other religion? The world's already tried that. We're more advanced than that. Science has taken over. All of this stuff has always come up in every single generation. That's just another philosophy. That's just another religious thing. That's just garbage. We've already gone past that, and look where it's gotten us. We can't turn the clock back. We can't just go back to those old belief systems. We now have science to back everything up. And I think he uses 3 counters to push back on that claim. First, the idea of putting the clock back. That's kind of a phrase that was available back there in the 40s, is this idea of kind of going back and starting over or going back to a lesser time or something like that. We can't turn the clock back. It's too late. We're well past that. And Lewis uses that turn of phrase as the idea of progress. We all want progress. We all want to get nearer to the place that we all want to be. And if we have made a wrong turn, then going forward doesn't get us any closer. In fact, true progress comes from actually turning around and going back. It's like a literal road or a math equation, as we've been talking about. The sooner you realize you have made an error, going back is the quickest way forward. That's the argument he's trying to make, is this idea that if you have made a wrong turn, if you've moved away from religion or morality or God or whatever it is, the quicker you make the correction, the more progressive you actually are. It's pig-headed to just say, well, I already made that mistake 10 years ago, 5 years ago, last week. Can't do anything about it now. Let's just keep trucking along. Nobody would do that. It's recognizing where the mistake was and realizing the sooner you can turn around, the quicker you're actually going forward. No matter how far you've gone down the wrong road, as soon as you turn, you're actually moving forward. That's one of the arguments he makes here about this idea of turning back the clock. And then second, he uses the idea that we haven't talked about any particular God, let alone the God of Christianity, just something that is behind this moral law. And I think that's really cool how he's trying to focus again on that particular God. Now, I want to focus on the last section of chapter 5 as we close out kind of book 1 of Mere Christianity. I think what it has for us here is just some of the most beautiful language that is just beautiful on how this is actually phrased. And I've tried many times to condense it or paraphrase this section, but there's too much here, and it honors too much of what C.S. Lewis was trying to do and really closes out our idea of book 1 before we start drawing a little closer to the God of Christianity, which is what we're going to continue to talk about as we go through this book. So this section is going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's one of my favorite sections of Mere Christianity. Let me pull it up here real quick. Okay. You find out more about God from the moral law than you do the universe in general, just as you find out more about a man by listening to his conversation than by looking at the house he built. Now, from this second bit of evidence, we conclude that the being behind the universe is intensely interested in right conduct, in fair play, unselfishness, courage, good faith, honesty, truthfulness. These are all things that he is very much aware of, intensely interested in, pressing upon us. That's what C.S. Lewis is trying to lay out here. In that sense, we should agree that the account given by Christianity and some other religions that God is, quote, good. But don't let us go too fast here. The moral law does not give us any grounds of thinking that God is, quote, good in the sense of being indulgent or soft or sympathetic. There is nothing indulgent about the moral law. It is hard as nails. It tells you to do the straight thing, and it does not seem to care how painful or dangerous or difficult it is to do. If God is like the moral law, then he is not soft. It is no use at this stage saying what you mean by a good God is a God who can forgive. Again, you go too quickly. Only a person can forgive. And we have not yet got as far as a personal God, only as far as a power behind the moral law, and more like a mind than anything else. But it may still very well be unlike a person. If it's pure impersonable mind, there would make no sense in asking it to make allowances for you or to let you off. Just as there's no sense in asking the multiplication table to let you off when you get your sums wrong. You are bound to get the wrong answer. And it's no use either saying that if there is a God of that sort, an impersonable absolute goodness, then you do not like him or not going to even bother with him. For the trouble is that one part of you is on his side and really agrees with his disapproval of human greed and trickery and exploitation. You may want him to make an exception in your case to let you off this one time, but you know at bottom that unless the power behind the world really detests that sort of behavior, then he cannot be good. On the other hand, we know that if there does not exist an absolute goodness, it must hate most of what we do. I love that. On the other hand, we know that if there does exist an absolute goodness, it must hate most of what we do. We are in a terrible fix. This is right at the end of chapter 5. If the universe is not governed by an absolute goodness, then all our efforts are in the long run hopeless. But if it is, then we are making ourselves enemies of that goodness every day. And we're not in any least likely to do any better tomorrow. So our case, again, is hopeless. We cannot do with it. We cannot do without it. Great. So good. Mere Christianity is so good. God is the only comfort. He's also the supreme terror, the thing we most need and the thing we most want to hide from. He is our only possible ally, and we have made ourselves his enemy. Some people talk as if meeting the gaze of absolute goodness would be fun. They need to think again. They're only playing with religion. Goodness is either the great safety or the great disaster, according to the way you react to it. And we have reacted the wrong way. Now, my third point. When I chose to get to my real subject in this roundabout way, I was not trying to play any kind of trick on you. I had a different reason. My reason was that Christianity simply does not make sense until you face the sort of facts I've been describing. Christianity tells people to repent and promises them forgiveness. It therefore has nothing, as far as I know, to say to people who do not know they have done anything to repent of and who do not feel that they need any forgiveness. Oh, here's the line to end all lives right here on this one. It is after you've realized that there is a moral law and there's a power behind that law, and that you and I have broken that law and put ourselves wrong with that power. It is after all of this, and not a moment sooner, that Christianity begins to talk. And that, my friends, is what the rest of the book and the study is going to be talking about, is the God of Christianity, how we reconcile with the moral law and the moral lawgiver, the creator of the universe. That's what the arguments we're going to go through for the rest of the book. I really hope you'll join me every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. I'll be going live on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. I've got Facebook and YouTube over here. I got TikTok over here. I'm going to try to get them combined, but I think this is just going to be a great, worth your time to come to. But if you don't have time to come on every Tuesday night, every Tuesday night, I do have my blog that's going to be going through this. It's got a handout each week. It's totally free. There's no sign up. There's no paywall. There's none of that stuff. It's just a free PDF of each week. It'll have kind of this week, and the next week's will be available, so you can go through it this week and be ready for next Tuesday and just keep going through this. It'll be about 8 weeks that we'll go through this. But just what an incredible work of C.S. Lewis. I just love the phrasing of it, and just love how he writes this stuff. Is just amazing. So go to BibleNerd.com to get the PDF, to be able to join us next week as we go through week 3, as we go into the next book of Mere Christianity. So it's kind of broken into books within the book. That's just what they title them. And each book has a couple different chapters. So join me next week as we start book 2 of Mere Christianity, as we go through those chapters. And I've tried to set this up in a way that's not a crazy amount of reading each week, just flows really well. But I know you'll want to spend some time with it. And if you have the handout and the study guide, it helps to kind of go through that, to go back and read some of the sections that we're going through. So again, totally free. I've got the whole thing sitting right here, ready to go. So each week we're going to load it up and we're just going to talk about it. Why not? What an incredible topic we can be talking about. So until then, I hope you have a wonderful day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. And we'll see you next week. Hope you have a wonderful night, guys. Now I got to figure out how to shut everything off.